Final question, the Indian economy, the sustainability of the Indian economy in the medium term. What is your reading of where the Indian economy is today, and to what extent is it sustainable given a number of the challenges that it's facing, and perhaps facing quite well because the challenges themselves are changing India in that regard? And what are some of your fears about the Indian economy?
See, if you look at the Indian economy, fundamentally it's dependent upon industry, services, to a smaller amount on agriculture. Or if you take the other side of it, it's 55 to 56% consumption, about 20% investment, and the balance government spending. So I think we overemphasize government spending, the outside world, and we overemphasize India being an investment story. India is really a consumption story. It is largely a private story. That's one part of it, which is why it continues to grow. Structurally, for the medium and long term, if you look at India, we have a young population. We have a high savings rate of 35%. Our financial intermediation could be better. We could have a debt market, and we could have a reduction in fiscal deficit, etc. So we have a high savings rate. We have a young population. We have low dependence on exports. We have a perfectly functioning banking system. And there are lots of improvements that are required, which if we work on, can only improve it from here. So I think growing at 8% is not a problem for India. Somewhere between the 7.5% and 8.5% is not a problem. However, it would be foolish on our part not to aim at a 10% growth rate. I think everybody knows what needs to be done. The problem in the past has been the execution. So if you look at the budget, it identifies a reduction in fiscal deficit. It identifies agriculture reforms that need to be done. It identifies that subsidies must move from general to specific subsidies so that the intended beneficiaries get them. It identifies health. It identifies education. It identifies corruption. So there's nothing that has not been identified to reach the 10% growth rate.
Yeah.
But we've not been very good at that.
Yes, and honestly, why should we not be concerned about government deficits, the unspecified subsidies, and also the unwillingness to wean almost a third of the population on those subsidies, basically?
Yeah, I think I am now far more hopeful than I would have, say, been 2-3 years back.
And why is that?
First thing that you have to understand is the Right to Information Act that has been introduced, which allows the media, any individual, to ask for how was this project approved or who approved this, and assigns responsibility with deterrent action, which will substantially reduce corruption. Second is, if you see what Nandan Nilekani is doing in terms of the UID, once the UID is there and everybody has a bank account, then they will substitute food discounts with actual cash subsidy. 3 is, lot of the government is moving to e-governance, where the ability for petty corruption gets substantially reduced. Clearly, they have identified how much fiscal consolidation there will be. And I believe that we have reached a stage where there is no alternative. The debt market is also a necessity, a long-term debt market. So I do believe that we will move higher and higher in our growth trajectory. I don't think things will be sorted out overnight, but I would say in the next 18 to 24 months, you will see a lot more being sorted out. In fact, what I would say is, and I want this in the proper perspective, I am thrilled with the intrusiveness of the media. We have a very noisy media, and sometimes that noise leads to confusion in terms of a democracy in transition. Don't mistake that with the vibrancy of India. So when you talk about, somebody says there's corporate governance deficit, someone says, for Christ's sake, there's a corporate governance deficit in the world. We don't have a monopoly on human frailty. So whenever there are licenses involved, etc., yes, so I'm not saying there's no corruption. There's somebody from Goldman Sachs who wanted to ask me about corporate governance, and I said, you have a drink and keep quiet. That'll be better for you. So I'm just saying, We are defensive about corruption, but we may be a little too defensive. We don't have a monopoly over human frailty. There are certain parts that have corruption all over the world. Whenever there's a shortage commodity, a license is to be issued, real estate permissions. That's not to say we don't need to weed it out, but I think we're making progress.
Mr. Aditya Puri, thank you very much for spending time with us.
Thank you, Daniel. Pleasure.